Hey everybody, I'm Nancy McDermott, and today is the day for tomato pie. This is one of the treats of the southern summertime. It's not an old time recipe. It's kind of a modern, baby boomers, parents grew up party dish that came out of I'm thinking probably out of the magazines and the newspaper food sections and the community cookbooks. What it is delicious and doable. And I think once you see how easy it is and how delicious, you're going to want to make one too. So I'll drop the recipe down in the comments. You can look there, but let's talk about what you're going to need. First of all, you need a already baked, cooked pie shell. So this is pie crust dough that I have pre-baked in the oven, but it is fine to make your own pie crust. You may want to use butter or Crisco or lard or something, and flour and salt and a little bit of cold water to make your own pie crust, roll it out. Or you may want to get one of those frozen pie shells that you can find in the freezer section. And there's several kinds of already rolled out crust that you can just fit in the pan. Okay, so that's the pie crust. You're going to have that ready because it does go in the oven, but it doesn't cook in the oven long enough. We don't want to burn up the tomatoes. It doesn't cook in the oven long enough for the crust to get done. So this is made with a ready-made crust. And by the way, you could use the instructions for a graham cracker crust, only use saltine crackers, and make a savory cracker crust. We'll come back and I'll do you a video about that one of these days, but there's a lot of ways to go. Okay, other things that go in are shredded cheddar cheese, shredded Parmesan cheese, breadcrumbs. I'm using panko breadcrumbs, but any kind of breadcrumbs would work. I've got fresh basil and chopped green onions, mayonnaise, olive oil, salt and pepper, and of course, the star of the show, tomatoes. Okay, for the tomatoes, now I've already got my tomatoes ready. I slice them and I put them on paper towels, and then I sprinkled them with salt. And the idea there is to get some of the juices out. I love a juicy tomato. It's perfect for a tomato sandwich. It's great for a tomato sauce. When you're making tomato pie, you don't want the crust to get soggy. So you want the good tomato flavor, but not too much extra, juice. So I did these ahead of time, and you can see how the water has come out just like we wanted, and I salted them. Let me show you what I did. So I've got these 2 trays of already sliced up tomatoes that I'll use. I've got these beautiful beefsteak tomatoes actually at my local grocery store, and I need to core them. Where'd my little knife go? Whoop, wrong one. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. Okay, so I want to take out the core, and that means I'm just going to set it down on my cutting board and dig in and start sawing. And I'm going at an angle. I'm not going straight down. I'm going in at an angle because I want to take out a little plug, a little cap. So I'm going around, twisting, knife on an angle, and look what I get. I get a little pointed center, pointed tomato part. That's all the part that's not good and juicy. Bye-bye to that. Then I'm going to go to the bottom, and I'm going to slice off that, just a tiny bit off the bottom that we don't need. If you want to peel them, you can. You can dip a whole tomato in boiling water in a pan, let it be in there for about 30 seconds, and when you pull it out, you don't want to cook it, you'll be able to just pull that outside skin off. So for the most perfect tomato in a classic sense, you're going to peel it, but you know what? It's fiber, it's delicious. For tomato pie, I don't bother. That's not where I want to spend my time. Okay, so I'm going to slice this tomato just crosswise. I want nice thick slices, about 1/4 inch thick. I'm just going crosswise, and I'll get 3 good ones, 3 beauties that are solid, that are perfect for a tomato sandwich. And then I'll get that one top piece that's a little odd. And for the top one, I'm just going to cut it into maybe 3 pieces. And then for these, I'm also going to cut them in half, because when I'm putting the pie together, it's nice to have puzzle pieces. So I want all the tomatoes to fit in snugly together. So I find it's a little bit easier if I cut them in half. And I need my paper towels so the tomatoes have a place for their juices to go. All right, so I'm putting my paper towels here, just a couple of layers, and I'm going to set my tomatoes Remember, I've got my halves side by side, and I've got these little odd pieces from the top. That doesn't matter, they'll be perfect. And then I'm going to take a little bit of salt, which I have set aside. You're going to use a teaspoon of salt on all the tomatoes. So didn't seem like enough, but it is enough because that's going to draw the water out. So, and I'm using kosher salt, which is really easy for sprinkling, but you could use any kind of salt that is your favorite. And I'm just sprinkling that gently across the tomatoes. And when we come back 20, 30, 40 minutes later, these tomatoes will have given up a lot of liquid and they'll be really ready to go in the pie. Now, I've got tomatoes that I prepared yesterday, so they're all ready. We'll come back to those. And I said I have a beautiful beefsteak tomato. Farmers markets are full of the most wonderful, ripe, sweet summer tomatoes in this time of year in North Carolina. But you can use any tomato. A tomato pie has a lot going on. It's got basil, it's got green onions, it's got parsley, it's got mayonnaise and 2 kinds of cheese and breadcrumbs. So this is not the experience of eating a tomato straight out. It's tomatoes as part of a chorus. So to me, this is a dish where if you can get those beautiful tomatoes, I would just slice them and eat them or make a tomato sandwich. This is good even with the kind of tomatoes that you can get when you didn't make it to the farmer's market first thing in the morning. So rest assured, whatever kind of tomato you use, you're going to have a great tomato pie. Okay, so let's take a look at the cheese. I told you I'm using cheddar cheese. And you can go to the store and buy cheese that's already grated. That's fine. I love to grate cheese. Cheddar especially is easy to work with on a box grater. I hope you've got one of these. It's an old-time tool. And of course, grabbing something that's already grated is good. It's convenient, but it's not that much trouble. Make sure that you've got a grater in your kitchen and you just take that cheese and rub it on the gigantic openings, the big holes, and it goes really, really quickly. And of course, you want to hold back on that last piece. It's a little bit big. Just going to crumble that up. But I bought I think this was a pound size slice of cheddar, and I just peel off a nice chunk and then rub against the side and come up with lots and lots of gorgeous freshly grated cheese. So the cheddar cheese I did myself this time. The Parmesan cheese that we're using in this tomato pie, I had some that was already grated. Either one is fine. They both work. Okay, that's about the cheese. Let's talk about the green onions. We've got an amount of green onions and we've got an amount of basil, and we need half of them to layer with the tomatoes. So I'm going to scoop off half the green onions here, and I want half of the fresh basil here too. And I'm going to put those two, the green onions and the basil, and the salt and the pepper and the olive oil. That's going to be my first layer in layering the tomato pie. Okay, one other thing I wanted to show you is the basil, the fresh herbs. So in this recipe, we've got fresh parsley. I'm using Italian parsley, but you could use curly parsley, that's fine. And I've got fresh basil, and we bought beautiful young basil plants at the beginning of the summer, and these are from my garden. It is such a thrill, and I didn't do the hard work from seed. I bought a little teeny plant, and now I have a bunch of great big ones. So this is going to be a pesto factory before too long, because we have lots of basil we need to preserve for the fall. But for cutting up the basil, the thing to remember is do it at the last minute. Parsley is pretty sturdy, and you could chop up parsley and leave it and come back 2 hours later and it'll still be fine. It's not that delicate of an herb, but mint and basil, dill, they're very delicate. So put off chopping them up as late as you possibly can. So like set them out, and when you're really getting ready to put the pie together, that's the time that you should slice them, because they will wilt. Now, you can use a knife. So I've got my good paring knife, little slicing knife, and I'm just going crisscross, one direction, another direction. Very coarse cut, because this is just going to get sprinkled over the tomatoes and it'll disappear into the bites. If the knife work is a challenge, just get a pair of kitchen scissors. These are wonderful little kitchen shears, and you can use them to, let's see, I'll take this long part off and just pull the basil leaves together and just snip, 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 snip. You can do that with basil, with mint, with any kind of herb that you need, and that saves you from the chopping part if that's a challenge. Okay, so we've got lots of extra herbs, and no, those are not going to get thrown away. I'll put those over here for my next dish. All right, so now let's pre-assemble the filling. We've got a cup, I think it's a cup of mayonnaise, and I need to scrape that out. This is a filling, a richness that's going to go in to mediate between the tomatoes and the herbs and the crispy topping. I've got, let's see, I've got a cup of cheddar I'm going to mix in here. And I've got, let's see, the parsley and mix that together. So I've got the mayonnaise, I've got the cheddar, I've got the rest of the green onions, and I've got the rest of the chopped basil. So this is an herb, cheese, and mayonnaise creamy concoction that we're going to add to the pie to give it that signature richness. So you've got the sweet, natural goodness of tomatoes and then some rich, cheesy goodness, all of which adds up to tomato pie. Okay, we'll set this aside. And so now let's put the pie together. So I've got my already baked pie crust, and I'm going to fill the bottom with pieces of tomato. And one reason that you cut them in half is it makes it really easy to work with them as far as filling in the base of the, filling in the layers of tomato that make up the pie. So, and of course pie is sweet. No, chicken pie is savory. There are a lot of savory pies out there. A quiche is a savory form of pie. So I love all the pies, the sweet ones and the savory ones. And I'm looking for, so you'll see I've laid it in. Can you see I cut the tomatoes in half. There's the rounded side and the flat side. The rounded side and the flat side. That just makes it easy to fit everything up and have a solid base of tomatoes. So I'm picking a couple of smaller ones to finish up. And that, I think I can squeeze one more little round in there. There we go. So that's a good first layer. I'm going to now inundate this with a little bit of salt and pepper and a little bit of this. Remember, so this is the mix. Remember, I set aside half of the green onions and half of the basil. Here's where I told you you don't have to cut it too finely. It's all going to combine beautifully with the tomatoes. And on top of this, I've got olive oil. I'm going to put half of the olive oil that I've got and save the rest. So this is tomatoes, salt and pepper, green onions and basil, and a little kiss of olive oil. Let's do one more layer. I'm going to put more tomatoes, and I'm going to put the cut side, and then the round side, cut side, and round side. Bring my pan up here. I've got some little pieces here that will work very well. And if there's, you're kind of putting a puzzle together. So fitting them all in. I'm going to come in the middle there. And I used up this entire pan. And look how much I've just pulled out the paper towels. But can you see how much liquid? How much liquid there is in there? That is salted. Where the salt pulled extra liquid out there, that's going to mean we've got nothing but tomato richness and goodness in here. All right, I'm going to fill in this last couple of pieces, and I think that is good. Well, of course, it's hard to say I've got enough tomatoes because too much is never enough. But this time of year, we want to use them. I want to enjoy them. Keep seeing one more spot. Okay, so now I've got my second layer of tomatoes. I'm going to come back and get my basil, chopped basil, and my green onions that I chopped up in advance. That's half of what's called for in the recipe. And then I'm going to finish off with the rest of my salt and pepper and the rest of my olive oil. Nice to have it all measured out so you don't have to stop and think about how much. Okay, so that's the rest of the olive oil. So now we've got a double-decker tomato pie with lots of delicious herbs on it. Okay, next step is we want to cover this with the beautiful, yummy mayonnaise-based filling. So this was, remember, the mayonnaise, the cheddar, and I'm going to spread this around in dollops. Putting dollops over the top. And this isn't real precise. You know, this is not like, you know, a cake where you have to make sure it goes into all the edges. We're going to get it pretty well distributed. And then if it's a little thicker here and a little thinner there, in a dish like this, that is not going to matter. All right, so I need a spatula. Got my oven set for 325. And remember, the recipe is down in the description. And it's also on my blog. You can go to my blog, which is nancymcdermott.com, and Google tomato pie, and you'll find the recipe there with lots of pictures too. So if you just want the amounts, right here, and for details, go to my blog. Okay, so I'm spreading, I'm just mashing and pushing, trying to sort of seal it up on the side so that every piece is going to have a little bit of all the goodnesses, a little bit thicker in one place than the other, but I think we're good. All right, so we're almost ready. Now, wouldn't you rather have a little bit of a crunchy top? Me too. All right, so for the crunchy top, we have got a little bit more of cheddar cheese. Okay, here we go. So I've got about a 1/4 cup more of cheddar cheese. I've got the Italian parsley, which I chopped up early on. I've got breadcrumbs, and I said I'm using panko breadcrumbs, but seasoned Italian breadcrumbs, any kind of breadcrumbs. If you make your own, that's the best. And I also got shredded Parmesan cheese. You could also use Asiago. You could use Romano. For this part, for on the top, it's going to be exposed to the heat. So you want a grating cheese, the kind that you would sprinkle on top of pasta. So something that is going to melt nicely. Now I think I need a bigger bowl. So I don't want this to overflow, and I need to toss everything together. So I'm going to put my breadcrumbs, my cheddar, my herbs, my Parmesan, and I've got just a little bit of the parsley left over. I'm saving just a tiny bit out. So this is the dry topping. So I've mixed all this up, a little bit extra cheddar, Parm. This now goes over the top of the, let me just show you how pretty that is. This goes over the top of the tomatoes and the creamy mayonnaise layer, and spreading that out to the edges. I don't want to see any tomatoes. I want them to be covered up completely. And there we go. So now I'm just pushing and spreading. It's really just a matter, it's a little bit like making a sandwich, like making a hero sandwich where you've got all the different layers. And now I've got that all covered up. I'm going to put a little bit more cheese around, and I saved myself just a little bit of parsley to make sure we have some nice green goodness on the top. And that is our tomato pie. Now, this needs to go in the oven at 325 for about 45 minutes. We'll check the time. I'll put it in the oven, and you go do something, and I'll be back in just a bit. We'll taste it for sure. The finished product, it's still a little bit warm. I can pick it up. It's been out of the oven about maybe 10 or 15 minutes, so I can hold it. It's super hot on the bottom, but the sides are okay. And our tomato pie is ready. 30 minutes. Now remember, the reason is because the crust was already cooked, completely cooked through. It was like a cracker. You could pick it up and eat it. And because we've got a layer of tomatoes, which you want to have sort of warm up and connect with the olive oil and the basil and the good flavors, and then you got that layer of mayonnaise and fresh and basil, and you've got some Parmesan cheese. You've got different cheeses, but everything is cooked. It's not like an egg custard pie where you've got raw eggs. It's not like a something. It's not like a meatloaf where there are any issues. You're really just sort of heating everything up and bringing it together, and so it's ready fast. It's good now. It'll be good at room temperature. It keeps well. You can save it and then warm it back up gently the next day. Perfect for a picnic. But enough talking about it. Let me cut into it and show you. Now, it's going to cut the most beautifully and be the easiest to deal with when it's been out of the oven for about an hour, an hour or two. So ideal, make it at lunchtime and serve it at dinner. Make it at 3 in the afternoon and take it on an early evening picnic. But it's going to work. Let's cut into it and see what we got here. Okay, so I'm just making a nice big slice. See, look, the cheese, the Parmesan cheese on top sort of sets up in a very nice way. So I'm sawing along. If you have a If you have a serrated knife that will do this job, that would be ideal, but we're gonna be okay. We'll work with what we got here, and I'm gonna come in underneath and sort of loosen this up just a little bit, thinking in case it's very soft, I think I'm gonna wanna have, I have a proper pie server, but can't find it, and you might not have one. So really the point is to get it out and get it where we can eat it with our fork. Okay, so let's pull, see if we can lift this piece out. And I'm gonna get my, and you know the first piece is always the challenge. So I'm gonna lift that up, and 1, 2, 3, make my move. All right, so most of it came up, but a little bit of the bottom did not. So I've got a little bit of the bottom crust that I'm gonna put on the side. And so this piece is for me. We'll try to get a more beautiful one from you, but getting that first one out gives you a little bit more leverage. Okay, it's nice and hot and fragrant. All right, now let's move to a pretty little decoration plate and come here on the side. And again, I'm going to cut and make sure that I get through to the cooked crust on the bottom. And this time I'm going to be able to reach in with my spatula and see if I can get a nice smooth, get the whole base there. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, got it up. Okay, one tomato wanted to join its friends, so I'll pull that back out, and of course, we'll get this get the clean. You know, at the restaurant, you're always going to clean up the plate. Okay, all right, that could be prettier, but it's going to be delicious. And let's try one more time and see if we can get a beauty. And if not, I'll just say it's going to be prettier tomorrow, and today we're just going to eat. All right, coming up this side. And lifting up. And then I'm going to come here and go underneath. See if I can get all that to stay put. And let's get our spatula again. 1, 2, 3. All right. Okay, folks, you're going to do better than me because yours will be cool. But let's go ahead and taste it and see what we got. I told you 300 and I think 25. The correct temperature is we start at 375, and then when you put it in, you turn it down to 350. So start with 375, go down to 350 is the magic formula. All right. Okay, let's see what we've got here. And I've got the top is kind of a crispy layer. The Parmesan and breadcrumbs make it like a gratin. And let me get a bite now. My second bite is going to be all about the tomatoes with their seasonings. A little bit messy. Not finger food. Absolutely delicious. My last bite is going to be, I'm going to get some of this tasty crust on the edge, which is simple. Then I've got the rich tomato, all the herbs, all the cheese. See if I like it as much as I thought I did. Delicious. Okay, this is our tomato pie. My slices weren't pretty, but it's like a quiche. If you let it cool completely to room temperature and then slice it later, it's had time to set up. This way, it's still really tasty. And remember, you can reheat it. It's the perfect thing for sharing. You can. There's only 2 of us, so this is a lot. So we're going to probably cut this into quarters and take some by a couple of friends' house, ring the doorbell, run away, and make them happy with a delicious hunk of fresh tomato pie. Remember that the recipe is in the comments. It is in the description below, and I would love to hear from you. Have you had it before? Have you made it? Does your family have a secret recipe? What do you think about it? And if you try it, please let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll come back soon. And if you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe and ring the little bell so you can get notifications whenever I post a new video, which is every Thursday. Bye now.